We were just talking for people on YouTube, for people on the audio. This will make no sense at all. What happened there? But Dan and I were just talking about Married at First Sight. So for the Indian listeners over on YouTube, you didn't miss much. The messages that you need to be aware of. We're sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod, if you would like to give to the show directly and get some exclusive question asking stuff and so on. What's the other one? Oh yeah, we're on Instagram and we're on Twitter at The Cricket Pod. So head over there and join in the fun. Enjoy our prediction tweets that backfire spectacularly. First game we're going to cover today, Dan, is Chennai Super Kings v the Rajasthan Royals. Chennai Super Kings, they batted first and managed what I thought was a pretty formidable total of 190, thanks mainly to Ruturaj Gaikwad's maiden IPL century. Now I thought, based on the second half of the tournament so far, and just sort of based on Rajasthan Royals as a concept, that 190 was probably enough, and this game was kind of dead at halfway. But Evan Lewis and Jaiswal, they came out like they double parked the team bus, and they were going to get hit with an extremely large Emirati parking fine. Now they hit 77 from the first 32 balls of the match.
Yes.
Before Evan Lewis was out. Probably the opening stand of the tournament, I think. And then this is proof that miracles really do happen in sport. Then the Doob came out and continued the carnage, blasting a 50 off 30 odd balls himself, and helping Rajasthan to an absolute romp of a win, which gets them well back in the hunt for a playoff position, and does a little bit to help their net run rate situation out, which is now sort of minus 0.3. So only a tenth of a run behind Punjab, and I think their final match of the season is against the Kolkata Knight Riders. So they'll be able to leapfrog them if they win that match as well. So it's destiny well and truly in the hands of the Rajasthan Royals now, which I didn't necessarily expect to be the case, especially as their sort of multi-million-pound man has dropped out of the team. Dan, I think the first place to start here is with the litany of the three great batting performances that we saw in the match. Gaikwad, Jaiswal, and the Doob. Which of those three did you rate best?
I'm a real lover of plus 200 strike rate innings, so I'm going Jaiswal, then Evan Lewis, and then Jadeja because honestly, these innings are so undervalued by people. It's unreal. And I think we're going to probably go on to talk about general intent later on and things like that. But yeah, it's certainly innings like that I love. Doob, I think Doob just because we didn't expect it from him. He's got to take the plaudits in some way, shape or form. Gaikwad's shown this throughout the season. He's getting better. And this was obviously a kind of rubber stamping of that. But yeah, no, some really good batting performances, which is more than can be said for the first game.
Yeah, absolutely. For people in the chat, there's a few people pointing out that his name isn't the Doob, it's Dubé. We know that, but there's an English retired footballer called Dion Dublin, who has invented a musical instrument called the Doob, spelt the same way. And that is so funny to us that we started calling Shivam Dubé the Doob. And we're going to carry on doing that. So you'll have to live with it. Chennai's innings. If we get into that in a little bit more detail, and we should probably mainly talk here about Ruturaj Gaikwad's brilliant 101 from 60 deliveries, featuring 9 fours and 5 sixes, strike rate of 168. It was, until Jadeja joined him at the end, Dan, a little bit of a one-man band, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was certainly that. I mean, there's a couple of players I want to talk about later on in the CSK lineup, but yeah, he had a little bit of support from Mo, Faf, and then obviously the the 55 off the last 20 odd balls with him and Jadeja was the real icing on the cake, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about him improving. So he's like, well, this is his sophomore season, his second year in the IPL. And first year he scored quite a few runs, didn't he? He didn't feature in all of the games for CSK, but he did score some runs. But but a little bit slow in terms of aggressive intent. He's fixed that this year, right?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah, he's doing really well this year, and looks a player who could probably play multi formats for India. I would have thought for probably the best part of the decade.
Yes, I think that's we can maybe get onto that now. But just to recap, Gaikwad this year, orange cap holder now, which is obviously very important and will upset KL Rahul. King Legend. I don't think he actually understands that the IPL is a tournament played between teams. He thinks it's just a competition to win an orange hat. 508 runs, a strike rate of 140, 20% boundaries, almost bang. So he's hitting a boundary every fifth ball, which is pretty good. The only thing he doesn't do is hit loads of sixes, but he does hit quite a few sixes. It's not a massive hole in this game. He could just hit a few more to be really elite. I was thinking about this. Looking at the Indian lineup for the T20 World Cup. I think Gaikwad would be a better call than 2 or 3 of the players they've got that are slated to bat in the top 3, 4 for India. Too bold.
Now a lot of teams are starting to think like this. So Pakistan now obviously they've got a domestic tournament on right now too, and there's the same kind of conversations going on. I think based on what I've seen on social media that now people say, well, they should be in the squad and they should be in the squad, and someone who's in the squad's not in form and stuff. And I think this is where you have the problem of naming the squad prior to one of your big domestic tournaments. Is that this stuff's always going to happen, right? And although the English media, apart from one article I saw in The Guardian last night, the English media they're in willful denial that Owen Morgan is in any sort of poor form whatsoever. It's like the subject that no one's allowed to talk about. And but yeah, the same debate should be happening with England as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when a player comes through like this, I don't think it's too late to change the squads either. You have to consider it, especially when it's going to be played in the same conditions. People in the chat are pointing out that he has the most or joint most sixes in the IPL. What I mean by he doesn't hit loads of sixes is that compared to the number of fours he hits, he doesn't hit loads of sixes. So he hits what he'd be. He would go from very, very good to one of the best batters in the tournament if he'd turned 5 of the fours he's hit into sixes over the season. Because that. And the reason you sort of look at that is that it demonstrates that the batter has a game that, well, I suppose, works outside of the power play. Players who hit loads of fours, they tend to bat up the top of the order and take advantage of the ring field. Players who hit lots of sixes compared to the number of fours they hit have got a little bit more dynamism to their game. And can clear the ropes and keep up a strike rate through their innings. And to be fair, he did that today. So it is not a huge criticism that you can level at somebody who's having a great season, I think.
If that's your biggest criticism on someone, they're doing pretty well. Yeah.
It's not a huge problem. If we carry on through the innings. You said there were a couple of players that you wanted to talk about in the CSK side. Is there anyone specific that you'd call out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's probably. I mean, Stephen Fleming himself, as head coach, has gone on record now saying that he backs Rayner to come out of his slump. But I think that it's extremely questionable that he's represented value at 11 crore over the last 2 years. And I think on this form, he would struggle even to get a blast deal at the moment. Would be that's going to annoy a lot of people. And I've got, because of this post that I put on Twitter earlier, I've actually got a list of players in the IPL who play, either regularly or semi-regularly, who I don't think would warrant a blast deal even as a local player right now.
Any specific names, or is that a Substack?
No, it's not a Substack. No, Substack's about how to sort Sunrise's Hyderabad out, which has probably been my longest post of all time. So obviously CSK, we've just spoken about the current version of Rayner, and now this is on a broad point. This is what we have to talk about generally, because I think a lot of supporters, and certainly supporters of IPL franchises in particular, they have this kind of rose-tinted view that a player who was like amazing in 2016 should like not be jettisoned from their franchise now. Like so I noticed in one of the pods we done the other day, someone commented and said, "Oh, Warner was great in 2016. Why are you criticising him?" And I'm like, "Oh, John Terry won the Premier League in 2016. Now he was assistant coach at Aston Villa. Do you know what I mean? Like, players change, their careers change. They go from having value to less value and stuff like that. So we have to talk about the current value, but current version and the current value of a player rather than what they were at their peak. So and that's very important if we're going to run an efficient recruitment process. So I'm not sold on this current version of Rayner at all. Obviously, MS Dhoni has not done that much recently either, but I'm sure he might get a blast deal as a specialist captain. Obviously, Pujara would not get a blast deal, even though he hasn't played IPL this year. Certainly wouldn't. I'm not. Well, this is from my perspective as a recruiter. I want attacking players. I want players who can win the boundary count, moving through the teams. I wouldn't go anywhere near Shreyas Iyer unless you've got an amazing bowling attack because the guy just doesn't bat fast enough. And Jack, I wouldn't sign Steve Smith, who is an overseas player, with your money in T20, let alone mine. RCB, if we go to RCB, I think that we've spoken about Sachin Baby at length before. And I'm still not massively sold on KS Barat. I think his sort of strike rate ceiling is about 130, 135-ish. And I want more, from my perspective as a recruiter, I want more attacking players than that. Gurkirat Singh Man at KKR, I don't know how he's got a deal, to be honest with you. Numbers wise, that would be a real struggle to make a case for that. Punjab Kings, unconvinced about Mandeep Singh. Certainly, Moises Henrique as an overseas, not sold on at all either. Saurabh Tiwari at MI, I just don't see it at all. I don't understand how this guy's keeping Ishan Kishan out of the team, no matter how out of form Ishan Kishan is. If Saurabh Tiwari is the answer, what is the question? Is what I would say. Rajasthan, I don't like writing off young players, but at this moment in time, I'm not sure Riyan Parag is good enough at this point in time. He might well be in the future. He could well be a future star for them. But at this point in time, it's just too early for him. And the Sunrisers, where do we start with Sunrisers? Kedar Yadav, Manish Pandey. I'm not even a huge fan of Riddiman Sahar or Vijay Shankar, the current versions of them at the moment either. And I think Sahar had another poor knock the other day where he just chewed up a load of balls as well. So these players, and this is what I think that in the IPL, they're fans, coaches, teams, commentators, whoever, they're so tolerant of these guys who strike at like pedestrian strike rates, like run a ball for 40 off 40, or like you're more likely to get criticised, like Liam Livingstone did the other day, holding out on the boundary, than you are playing 44 or 48 balls or 13 of 23. No one says a word. When you're on commentary, no one says a word about those innings at all. So rare. Like even Krunal Pandya, 0 of 7 he was at one point today. Like this.
Got to play yourself in, mate. Somebody on Twitter actually sent in a tweet. I was going to read this out, but I might as well later, but I'll do it now. CSK have 2 walking wickets in Rayner and Dhoni, who hardly score any runs. Dhoni is captain and wicketkeeper. Rayner is playing as a fielder. Today was a perfect wicket for Rayner to come back into form, but I think his career is probably done. So you'd basically echo that and say that.
Yeah, I don't like writing off players' careers, but it's certainly not worth 11 crore, and I debate whether it's even worth 1 crore at this point in time.
Yeah. Let's carry on with this game. We'll just mention again, Ravi Jadeja keeps doing this season. Comes in for
amazing player, unbelievable.
Comes in, smacks, 5 boundaries and 15 balls, walks off, and it takes a score from decent. Looked like it was going to be decent, but at one point I think Gaikwad had 90 of their 140 runs. But Jadeja basically balances that out, and makes it look a little bit less embarrassing for the rest of the CSK lineup. 189. And we did actually have one question. I just wanted to get your view really quickly on this. Somebody asked whether you thought... so this is kind of what Kumar asked and what Joe Conroy asked. Was Gaikwad's innings actually any good?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I thought it was really good.
Put it this way, if you score 101 or 60 and your teammates score 101 or 60 and you have extras, you're getting 210.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone can argue with that whatsoever. So
and that would have
But it's a different
maybe
chase.
won them the game. Yeah.
It's a different chase.
Yeah. So I think, looking at it like that, I thought it was, it's not the world's greatest T20 innings, but it's an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10 from an opener. There,
You can never criticise a guy for hitting a ton in the T20.
Exactly. There. In the second innings, though, we saw a slightly different approach from Rajasthan Royals.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it.
Evan Lewis and Yashasvi Jaiswal went ballistic. They've got a combined strike rate of over 225. 77 runs off 33 balls between them, 5 sixes, 8 fours. You can't really ask for more in a game that you have to win, and in a game where you probably need a little bit of a net run rate boost as well, to completely own the power play and smash it as hard as they smashed it. That's good. I mean, I genuinely think that's the best opening partnership of this season. One of the best in the IPL, but probably at least off the top of my head that I can think of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and this is one of the frustrations that I see in the IPL all the time. And this is why I tweet stuff like I don't see the IPL as a massively high standard at the moment, because teams like they're just nudging and nurdling it around the power play. This is the time where you take risks, so the risk reward is better than in the middle overs, or even at death. Like with only 2 fielders out, like you can just go over the top. You go look at English cricket, and people will go, oh, it's on the road and whatever, but Sharjah has a 55-metre straight boundary, no matter what the pitch is like, and we'll talk about that later. But there's just no intent in most of these IPL matches in the power play. It's almost like they're happy to get to like 35 for naught at the end of the power play. It's really weird. So for me to see Lewis and Jaiswal do this today was just so refreshing. I mean, where is this on a regular basis? And I think that they showed, one, what is possible if you do go for that approach, and two, actually how to approach a chase. I'm sure MS Dhoni was absolutely fuming that they didn't take it to the last ball, but because that's what CSK would have done. Like, we know that. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it with a lot of other IPL teams as well. But they nailed the chase. They had it like down to run a ball with a long way to go. I think eight overs-ish. They needed to run a ball, and that's how you chase. That is how you chase. You put the game out of doubt. And this is again what we see. You hit boundaries, you win. Like, it's not rocket science, but these teams seem to overcomplicate things. Rajasthan, 27 boundaries in 105 balls. You're not going to lose a match if you do that. Obviously, there's a little bit of a trade-off in terms of stability. You are going to get rolled sometimes doing it. But as an approach, it's the best approach in T20 cricket. I just wish they'd shown this earlier. But even then, they still made mistakes. I mean, picking David Miller over Liam Livingstone, unless Livingstone's injured, oh my God, what a shambolic decision that is. I think Gaurav Sundararaman put a tweet up a few days ago about, I can't remember exactly the criteria, but basically over like regular IPL players, Miller was like the worst or second worst over these different metrics that he was using. And I don't understand the love for Miller at all at this level. Livingstone, even though he's been not in the best of form since he's come to UAE, I think that he's a far better player than David Miller. And if you offered me the choice of the two as a 100 franchise, if they're both local players, I'm taking Livingstone all day long and not even thinking twice about it. So yeah, a bit of a weird one there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Livingstone might not have had the greatest start to this second half of the IPL, but I don't think, particularly in games like the last one, if you get out trying to hit a six with not that much time left in a T20 innings, you've done the right thing. You're supposed to be out. T20 it's a format designed to condense to condense that bat versus ball battle. And particularly near the end of innings, you're not supposed to play for a red inker. That's the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
What teams do sometimes.
No, I agree. I was just going to go back. I was going to talk about this, and because I wrote a Substack for the Cricket Podcast Substack, the cricketpod.substack.com, if you want to go and have a look at it. I'm talking about the power play in the 100, the Blast, and the IPL. And basically in the IPL versus the Blast and the 100, teams score 10-15% slower in the power play. It's they're under 1.3 runs per ball, so it's quite suboptimal batting at the point in a T20 innings when actually it is easiest to score runs because there's no fielders on the boundary. In IPL games, that jumps up. So outside of the power play for the rest of the innings, the run rate increases quite significantly, and teams score faster outside of the power play. In English cricket, that's the opposite effect happens. Outside of the power play, the run rate falls for the rest of the innings. And then you talk about stability. The thing that IPL teams are definitely doing, and it does help them to accelerate, I suppose. By the way, they score fewer runs overall than in English cricket. The team totals are lower. The stability in terms of balls per wicket is much higher in the IPL. It's 25 plus balls per wicket in the power play. So basically, you've got a load of batters that are going out there not trying to strike boundaries and protecting their wicket. And we saw today how effective it can be if you use the bit of the game that you're supposed to use to score loads of runs. Jaiswal, I can't remember, is that his first IPL 50? I think he got close. I think he got close in one of the earlier second half games.
Yeah, he is actually 49 in one of the other matches.
Yeah. In the second half of this tournament, he has looked the absolute business, hasn't he? Have they got a little bit of a conundrum around whether they retain him at this point, do you think?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, thinking about who they're retaining is going to be a difficult decision. I'm pretty sure they're going to retain Samson as one. Difficult to know who their pick is the other ones, really, at the moment. I think it's certainly up for debate with a few games to go. Certainly a couple of spots up for grabs for them. I think it's a difficult decision. But realistically, at the end of the day, you've got to think about the market value, how much money someone's going to go for at the auction, and whether you can make a saving by retaining them, and that's the key consideration. You've got that value for money and saving as much of your budget as you possibly can to attack the mega auction. They
also have a big question, I think, around Jofra Archer and what they do with him. I think. I mean, Sanju Samson's a no-brainer; he's number one. But then where they go from that, it's there are some questions. I think that'll be quite a tough one for the brains.
I think probably might go with him. It'd be another 50, quick 50 from him in this comp.
Yeah. Well, if they make the playoffs and he does anything like he did today. I mean, if he gets 40 off 20 balls in one of the other games, then he suddenly looks like one of the most dangerous young Indian players, doing something that, as we've discussed at length on this podcast so far, not a lot of other Indian players are doing at the top of the order. So to chuck him back into the market could be quite a costly decision. There is the well batted Doob, well batted Jaiswal. There is one thing that we probably should talk about here in terms of how CSK lined up. Obviously, they had secured automatic qualification before this game, so they rested Deepak Chahar. And Deepak Chahar in this tournament has basically been CSK's seam bowling attack.
Yeah.
Sam Curran and Hazelwood, 109 runs, no wickets, 8 overs. That is crap, Dan, isn't it?
Unfortunately, so I think I've said on the pod before that I'm not a massive buyer of Hazelwood at this level. And Sam Curran, I mean, is he getting tips off Tom? I don't know. Yeah. So for the Indian listeners here, I think that Jack will hopefully agree with me. In the English media, a lot for the last year or two, or probably 3 years actually, thinking about it, is the English media is talking about Sam Curran eventually turning into a batter who bowls rather than a genuine all-rounder or a bowler who bats. And I think we're starting to see it a little bit now. I wasn't so sure, but I was sort of seeing it now. He struggled in Test cricket this year as well with the ball. He struggled in this year's IPL, certainly. He's going at almost 2 runs and over more than he did last season. He went at almost 9 and over in the Blast this year as well from a 10 over sample size. So yeah, it hasn't gone that well for him so far this year with the ball. So yeah, I'm sure Chahal will be back in next game.
Yeah,
I'm not sure he's a 4-over bowler at this level.
who Curran?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's asking a lot. I think he's quite one-dimensional as well. It doesn't bowl particularly quickly. I don't think his slower ball's particularly good,
no.
and I don't think he's got particularly good control. And I think you need at least one of them to be a 4-over bowler in the IPL.
Yeah,
If he could nail exactly where he wanted to bowl the ball every delivery, then he could get away with being a bit slow. If he was a bit quicker, he could get away with being erratic. If he had Mustafizur's slower balls,
yeah.
then he could bowl that pace and spray it around, but the batter wouldn't know what was going to happen off the surface. But he doesn't really do any of those things, and that's a problem for him. And Hazelwood as well. I mean, like you say, I mean, I, he's this is a bit rude for a bowler who's obviously a brilliant Test player. But he's just a slot bowler in T20 cricket. He serves up. His natural delivery is just served up for a bloke who's setting up to hit it to hit it, and Jaiswal did.
I look at CSK and KKR's bowling lineup, and I think I've not got a lot of time for it at all.
We should say though that Shardul Thakur had another good game. 2 wickets, 30 runs, 7.5 economy. He did his job. Is it time that we promoted him from Lord Shardul Thakur to God Shardul Thakur?
I think so, because as someone pointed out in the chat, and I knew this anyway, but someone pointed out in the chat a while back that Lord was given to him because I think he was a member of Ashok Dinda's academy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And certainly he looks like he's graduated with first-class honours because he's actually become really quite decent now. Yeah. So we'll have to ditch Lord, I think, now, yeah.
Yeah, so God Thakur, well bowled him. And that's sort of it. I mean, it's kind of interesting from Dhoni to stick with the Pacers when it was all going wrong and only bowl 3.2 overs of spin across the innings, and maybe a tactical misstep from him there, and he's usually pretty good.
No, I don't know about that. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt there.
Fair enough.
Jadeja was held back because they didn't want to bowl against left-handers, which is understandable. The only tactical faux pas I would say is that, and this is not just an MS only thing in this particular match, it's an IPL thing. I know Morgan's done it a bit differently this year, which is, props to him for, he might not be able to bat very well, but he's made some good captaincy decisions, is that there's a real reluctance to open the bowling with spin in the IPL. And 2 left-handers, particularly Evan Lewis, does not have a good record against off-spin. Would there have been an opportunity to get Mo on first over, I wonder?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't think Dhoni's use of spinners this year is quite interesting. He's barely bowled them at all outside of the middle overs, and he's not. That isn't something he's done throughout his career. He like used Ashwin, I think, quite a lot of the death, and has been aggressive up front with spin. But this year he's obviously decided on a formula that keeps the spinners to the middle overs. I think part of that is because Deepak Chahar is bowling half the power play overs in most of their games, and Bravo is. I don't really know if you can use him at any point except the death. It's
well, that's the problem when you're picking power play specialists like Chahar, Hazelwood. You don't have that flexibility because you know they've got to bowl the bulk of their overs in power play.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap up on that. The last question, I suppose, and a few people have asked this, is do you think Rajasthan can qualify, Dan? Their final 2 games, SRH and KKR, so they're going to have an opportunity to boost their run rate against SRH, you'd think. And then the KKR playoff, could be like a quarter final almost.
You've got 4 teams all scrapping for one place, really. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be so good this week to see it. They can definitely qualify, no doubt. They're probably going to have to win both their games to do so. But again, say Sunrisers, they're going to be 70-30, 65-35 to win that, and then probably a 50-50 knockout match against KKR.
So I got that wrong, Dan. It's Mumbai. They're playing MI, and then KKR. It's KKR who've got SRH.
Oh, so KK are probably in the box seat then, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So Rajasthan have got to play two teams who are both with them on 10 points. So, well, they're going to have to win them both.
Yeah. All I don't want to happen, is the Punjab Kings of comedy to sneak through the middle when everyone else is beating each other and to qualify with like 7 wins. And yeah, as long as that doesn't happen, I'm up for anything. I think it's going to be great this last week and a bit of group games. Where are we up to? So we've done 32 minutes. Just a quick reminder. If you're watching the live stream, hit subscribe, hit like, leave a comment, tell all your friends about the podcast. Follow us at The Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. We're sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. And head over to patreon.com/The Cricket Pod to become a Patreon. We lost a Patreon this week. It was very sad. Not dead. They just stopped being Patreon. Let's get on to the first game as well. I don't think we'll have as much to talk about here because it wasn't a great game, but there are some implications. Delhi v Mumbai. Delhi chose to bowl first, which wasn't a massive surprise. And we saw at Sharjah again another one of those slightly difficult batting tracks, as the ball, especially from pace bowlers, seemed to be sticking in the wicket a little bit. Whereas last year Sharjah was, the fun stadium, this year it's a little bit jammy. Mumbai, they managed to battle their way up to 129 for 8, and it really was a battle. Only Sky found any fluency. In response, Delhi, as I sort of thought, as I think you could sort of predict, found it a little bit hard to bat themselves before Shreyas Iyer, with a little help from Pant and Ashwin, managed to settle things down and guide them to a reasonably comfortable 4-wicket victory. First of all, Dan, Sharjah, I was looking forward to seeing some more IPL games at Sharjah. It's disappointing so far, isn't it?
Somewhat. I remember when we did a pod before the resumption of the IPL, we were talking about how much we were looking forward to these matches at Sharjah and how much we loved them, and that's turned out to be worse than Chapur.
It is a bit strange. Mumbai, let's talk about their batting, because I think that's where they've lost this game. They've been such a good bowling side this year, but their batting, time and time again, has let them down. Are they? I guess there's a few ways of looking at this. Are they in a situation where some of their players have regressed, or are they a team of flat track bullies that can only do it on roads?
No, I think that this is not a good time for them in terms of the regression. So I think, and this is quite a broader point, but we've seen in cricket and we've seen in a lot of other sports as well, that following like a kind of a long layoff, be it for COVID-related layoffs, like whether it's like the real lockdown from like March until professional sport resumed, kind of like July, August time of last year. And then, obviously, we've had a big layoff in the IPL. A lot of players haven't played cricket. It's been the younger players who have come through stronger. You know, your Gaikwads of this world and Prithvi Shaws and players like that. You know, like the young players who've got kind of points to prove, probably have a better underlying fitness level these days. And the older players have really, really struggled generally. And I think that's probably a part effect of this. Now, I said before, and I'll say it again now, I'm not a massive buyer of Mumbai retaining Rohit Sharma at the auction. I think he's regressed a little bit. He's declined a little bit. I wouldn't have Tiwari anywhere near a Blast team, let alone an IPL team.
That's a shocking call, I think, to play him.
Yeah, I mean, Ishan Kishan might not be informed, but the guy's got so much more upside. And even Pollard hasn't done that well since the IPL resumed. Hardik Pandya's carrying an injury in some way, shape or form. Krunal seems to have lost a lot of his batting mojo as well. And all these things at the same time, no matter how good your team is, no matter whether you've got Jasprit Bumrah and various other world-class players, you can't carry all of those players underperforming all at the same time, no matter how good you are.
Yeah, and I think actually, you know, they've been bailed out of a couple of games this season by Kieron Pollard. Their record could be worse. it's a little bit of a shock that they've so precipitously fallen off versus last year when they completely dominated the tournament. Like it was weird going into the knockouts knowing that that one team was such a large favourite to win it. In what should be a little bit of a lottery portion of the tournament, but they just look so comfortable, beating Delhi 4 times and stuff like that. I mean, they beat the second best team in the tournament last year 4 times.
And this mega auction is going to be a real test for them because they've got a reputation of smart recruiting, and generally I do go along with that. But they're going to have a big heart v head couple of moments at this in their retentions and their mega auction strategy, and it'll be really interesting to see how they go.
On the bowling side, Delhi, you know, it wasn't all Mumbai being crap. Delhi bowled well. Ulrich Nortje again was pretty good. I liked watching Avesh Khan bowl today as well. He's got a little bit, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, a little bit of the Malinga about him.
Yeah. And he nails the Yorker as well. Yeah, I like him. He impressed me before the tournament paused, and he's impressed me since it's turned up again. So yeah, a lot to like with him. And my wife, it's funny because my wife actually, she likes to play talent spotter sometimes. And after about 5 matches of watching cricket in her life, she goes, "Yeah, this Avesh Khan's good." And she's actually been proven right.
Yeah. The only, you know, everyone bowled pretty well here. Rabada was a little bit expensive in the context, but there was one person who didn't bowl that well, and that was Ravi Ashwin. I was looking at his numbers because I you know, maybe, you know, sometimes things stick out to you when you're watching cricket, like the moments or themes that you pick up on draw your attention. And I think that almost every time I seem to watch Ravi Ashwin bowl at the moment in T20 cricket, he gets smacked around the park. So I had a look at his numbers this year. He is averaging 63 with an economy rate over 7.5. Last year, his bowling average was over 30, and I think his economy was even higher last year. Is it a mistake? Because I think, looking at these numbers, it is a mistake. Is it a mistake that India have picked him for their 15-man T20 World Cup squad?
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. So, if you look at his numbers, his best years in the IPL were before 2016, when the scoring rates were a lot lower in the IPL. It's fair to say as well.
Yeah.
Since then, his economy is over that time period is about 7.5. He averages about 25 plus balls per wicket. Doing some quick maths, but they're not great numbers. He can't really hit, so he's not a boundary hitter of any repute. So yeah, I'm not massively sold on him as an IPL, sorry, T20 World Cup player at all. It's really weird how they picked him in the World Cup and then they didn't pick him in a Test series when he's a really good Test bowler.
Yeah, I think I think they've got that one wrong. I just don't really see what he adds.
The other thing I would also say is that over the last few years, his record against lefties is not much better than against righties, and if you're going to pick an off spinner, you want that matchup and I don't think he really provides it.
No, I mean, who's he going to get in the team instead of Chakravarti maybe? And I think right now, it's so obvious that Chakravarti is a better bowler.
Yeah.
So
he hits 12% boundaries in the last 3 years in T20 as well. So
the batting's sort of not.
Yeah, he has nothing to bat either. Yeah.
Well, that's Ashwin. That's Ashwin written off. So he'll probably turn out to go on some kind of world record tear now, win the World Cup single-handedly for India. In the Delhi innings, we saw Mumbai come out fighting. Trent Bolt was good up front. Yadav, was he in the team again instead of Rahul Chahar? Yeah. Bowled okay. Krunal was all right. Boomer was all right. But Coulter Nile, much derided Coulter Nile on this podcast. Pick of the bowlers. Is he good or not, Dan?
I actually think he's all right. I know that you say he's much derided. I'm not someone who's derided him. I think that meant just Ross left.
Yes, I think it is.
I don't mind him. He can hit at 8. He's a decent enough bowler. There's worse signings as an overseas player in the IPL than Nathan Coulter-Nile, I think, personally.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, this was an innings where 120, 129 wasn't going to be enough, even though they took a few wickets and had them 77 for 5 at one point. It only took one innings really to guide them home. What I did think, and I know you said you weren't too hot on Shreyas Iyer. I did think that the innings he played does demonstrate why it's sometimes useful to have an anchor in your top four, because they tend to be able to bail a team out of situations where the pitch is quite difficult because they have multiple on the floor scoring shots. And I thought we saw a little bit of that today, and it was quite a useful innings, Dan.
Yeah, that is true. Although I would also counter that point by saying that they already had an anchor at number 3 who'd failed.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't be in the team, should he, Steve Smith?
No, and I wouldn't quite call him an anchor, but I don't think he's far off of Shikhar Dhawan as well.
He's an interesting one, Dhawan, isn't he? Because he has games where he is an anchor and games where he's been quite explosive this year. I mean, maybe that could be the sign of a player who's quite good at judging conditions. He's quite experienced, so maybe he's got a decent understanding of what a good score is going to be.
I just look at this Delhi team. I think, if they're going to chase 180 plus, they're going to need someone like Shaw or Rishabh Pant to have a day out.
Yes, well, I mean that's how they've been good this year. Is that 60% of their runs, I think, before this game have been scored by Shaw and Dhawan. So it is literally what you're sort of saying there. One of them's having a day out and propping up the rest of the side. You do see when they failed today, they could easily have lost this game. I think it's just that the perfect set of circumstances in that it was quite a low score and a player like Shreyas Iyer was going to be quite valuable on that pitch. Combined to make it look better than it was, but I don't know. I still think Delhi are vulnerable, and I know they just keep winning. It sounds ridiculous when they're standing with a record 9-3, but I just don't love it. Yeah.
I mean they're good, but they're not 9-3 good.
Yeah, that's basically what I'd say. It's like
or something like that.
They're in the best 4 teams in the IPL. I've got no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Are they second or first best in the IPL? I'm still yet to buy into the Capitals hype. I'll be honest. We had a few questions in. We'll start with Vix from the Super Chat, and this is a little bit off topic. So Vix says, only Sachin is God. Sorry. Off topic, what does Dan think of Venki Iyer? Good enough to be an Indian T20 team or too much recency bias? What do you reckon?
Probably a bit of both. I like him. Someone tweeted the fact I saw it on my timeline earlier. Someone tweeted that he's actually the second best Indian pace all-rounder at the moment, which kind of says a lot for their lack of all-round options. And I agree with that. I mean, I've made the point a lot of the time on here before that I think that there's a big gap in the Indian player pool for a top 6 batter who bowls and likewise frontline bowlers who can hit, and that's a big problem. So you know what, the scarcity of resources dictates the fact that if he has a good run, he probably will get picked.
Yeah, fair enough. And then over on Patreon, patreon.com/the cricket pod. Just a reminder there. Girish asks, he says, Doob looks leaner and meaner from when he was playing for our team, RCB, he means there. He looks a totally different player today, which is true. Glenn Phillips looks good too. The question he asks have Rajasthan Royals sealed the final nails in the Mumbai coffin with that win today? I guess we can twist that. It's like, what do you reckon Mumbai's chances of progressing actually are at this point, Dan?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you look at these 4 teams on 10 points and you think they've probably all got about ballpark 25% chance of qualifying each.
Oh, right. So you think it's actually pretty flat? It's not the run rate differential is not going to...
Maybe a little bit. Maybe you could throw a bit more at KKR. And there's probably some random scenario where RCB lose their last 3 games and 2 teams out of the 4 teams on 10 points qualify too. But yeah, maybe like 30% low 30s for KKR, 25-ish for Mumbai and Rajasthan, and a bit less for Punjab, something like that.
Yeah, and then he also asks, with 2 games remaining for Mumbai, surely the BCCI may reconsider the fact that there are 6 Mumbai players in the T20 team. Should they make a change now? Shreyas, Chahal, Gaikwad, and he says Venki Iyer. Even would you mix it up? I mean, Ishan Kishan isn't playing for Mumbai now. Can he go to the World Cup?
That's a problem. If you're not playing as a local, that is a big problem. Now, I don't agree with that decision from Mumbai. I will hate, but I said that earlier, that his ceiling is far, 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 far higher than Saurabh Tiwari. Now, the thing is that this is why naming a squad before your biggest domestic tournament probably isn't the greatest idea, or having some flexibility probably is required. I think there was a deadline to name the squad, so anyone who's thinking about typing that in the chat or comments and stuff, I'm aware of that. But having some degree of flexibility probably will be beneficial at some stage. So who did you say? Venki Iyer, Gaikwad, and who was the other one? Sorry, Shreyas Iyer. Look, I'll say this right now, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. I wouldn't have Shreyas Iyer in the India squad because they've already got one anchor, and that's Kohli. So you don't need two. So that's one I wouldn't pick. But also, if I'm changing the batting lineup, I want players with high ceilings, high strike rate upside, and if that means you have to jettison Ishan Kishan or someone else in the squad, then that's okay, but you have to find someone who can replicate that boundary production or improve it.
I'll tell you what will be an interesting one for India, is what they do with the Kohli succession, given that I think we're both of the view that Rohit Sharma's on the decline. And he is, at the moment, probably Bookie's favourite, isn't he, to take on the T20 mantle. Do they really need a declining Rohit Sharma penciled in for every single T20 game in the next World Cup cycle and through to the end of that? I think that could be tricky when you could give the captaincy to Pant and then bring in, Venki Iyer and Gaikwad as your 2 openers, or Gaikwad and Jaiswal as your 2 openers, depending on how he goes, and probably have a more dynamic team overall than if you have Rohit Sharma there.
That's awkward. I think the one thing that goes in sort of in favour of that Sharma succession is that there's quite a quick turnaround to the next World Cup. There's not that typical longer gap. But I take your point completely. It's not, if you're looking at a future plan, that's not ideal. I still have question marks about how good a captain Pant is, but to be honest with you, like I've said so many times before, you don't really need to be a good captain. You just need to be so good at following plans, basically. And that's fine. So, yeah.
Paddock. We haven't even talked about Paddock as an option.
Yeah, so they've got some decent options there. I think that they're probably more likely to pick Shikhar Dhawan than they are to pick Gaikwad or something like that. I don't know. I get the feeling that there's a lot of these teams, and I don't think India are that different. I certainly agree with. I certainly would put England in this bracket as well, and I certainly would put Australia in this bracket too. A lot of countries are picking what I call legacy players in this World Cup. Guys who they feel like they almost deserve this opportunity because they've been around the squad for a number of years, despite the fact that they're patently not good enough at this point in time.
Yeah. Right, we're going to wrap up there. Dan, do you want to remind people where they can find your Substack? A couple of people actually messaged to say they've been signing up and enjoying your content. So.
Yeah, I've got a few good sign-ups. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, danweston.substack.com. I've got to do, as my next post will be a mailbag. Might do it tomorrow morning, but probably won't have time, so I'll probably be at some point next week. A load of people will ask questions and stuff. Probably do one of them a month. That'd be good. Some really good questions on there. If you've got any more, throw them in quickly. danweston.substack.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at SA_Advantage. But if you're going to slate me for saying that the second half of the IPL is the same standard as the 100, then they probably don't bother following me.
So that's Cataclysm in the chat that's just come in with that point of view. Your blast players will shit on these pitches. So thank you for that valuable insight, Cataclysm. You can find us on Twitter at The Cricket Pod. We're sponsored by Woodstock Cricket Company. And Patreon, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. Head over there. Otherwise, like and subscribe and do all that stuff on YouTube that tricks the algorithm. And we will be back. I think we're going to be back tomorrow. So we'll be finishing off the weekend with more cricket podcasts. Goodbye. Awesome. Apart from the bit where I